Welcome back to the bunker. So, bunker on the road. So, amid the coronavirus pandemic, if you will, there's a lot of bailouts happening, and it's interesting that all of a sudden the airlines need a bailout amid the coronavirus. And all the people who now are out of work need bailouts because they forced small businesses to close. Many businesses that, such that artists, people who aren't plugged into a pension program or a pension system, people kind of would get by maybe week by week because they had other pursuits. Not necessarily plugged into a what do you call it when you get your paychecks and they put it direct deposit community, you know what I mean? Because what it is that, and it's not a judgment, it's just that they're not able to support that system that they created. They put the pension funds into Wall Street, and the reason this is going to be an introduction of, because I think some of the videos I was putting up, I'm doing it off the top of my head, but I think I go into too many different areas, and I think maybe it might be beneficial to focus on maybe small segments, or maybe keeping a focal point on a topic that perhaps we just need to discuss. It's not about it being right or wrong. And I think what has happened is, what is our relationship with Wall Street? And it's not is capitalism bad or good? It is, how is it affecting the society as a whole? Because what has come apparent amid this coronavirus, because the coronavirus is a virus, right? And it relates to Homeland Security. And Homeland Security, something is implied even in that term, Homeland Security, as if we are going to be a security for abroad, that we have this as our Homeland Security. So even in the wording, there has been decisions made that perhaps we did not agree to. And this has to do with a global security. If we call ourselves Homeland Security, then it is inferred that we are going to be a global security. And then it's this idea of global citizens. But this is what I suggest. Being a human being makes you a global citizen, inherently. And inalienable rights endowed by the Creator was a declaration that being human, given the gift, if you would say God or creation or whatever narrative or image or story you put on life that is in our bloods, is freedom. So no border is around that. And we declare our independence. Of course, there's going to be a monetary system, and men are fallible when women. When I say men, I mean men and women are fallible. And I think it was Thomas Paine who said that we create societies based on the healthy aspects of being human, being of humankind. Because I think his suggestion was, I forget the name of the book at the moment, but it's like you get a group of people living on an island, and on that island they're stranded. So in the beginning they work together, and some people have different skills, and they put together a little village. They end up getting some water together, food, and now in the beginning it's rough, but they get it together. They have a little village going in this stranded island, and things get comfortable. But then once things get comfortable, you have those who want to take a little bit more. You have those who want to loaf a little bit, human aspects of human nature. And that's when we have to begin to regulate. So this is where government comes in, related to our ills, the ills of man, the defects of man, the evil of man, which I equate to ego, right? But that's another story. So this is the relationship where we have, when our forefathers said inalienable right, we were declaring our freedom from those ills of rule of law related to these other kind of ills of man. Checks and balances were to keep us in check. So, and that's really the point of this, because it's about personal freedoms. And money is a leveraging mechanism. And, and there's also an image. If you ever saw The Grapes of Wrath, it's during, and people suggest that the Great Depression was really maybe helped along to make changes that centralizing of, because America was an open expanse of land. So it's a way of centralizing power, right, through banking. So it's a suggestion. So basically, the images put forth in Grapes of Wrath was that during the Dust Bowl, you had farmers that lost their crops. And so there was a small town where, and I forget the details, but in another state, and they said, well, we're hiring workers for maybe $5 a day or something like that, right? Or a price that was low but doable for people. And it was on pamphlets, media, right? It's like the internet. So what happens is that one of the families, they get one of these flyers and they say, you know what, let's pack up the truck and go. But you have all these families coming from all over the country, and they get to this place, and basically it's set up where they come in and they find out that the pay is a lot lower, and they said, well, you want the job or not? We got plenty of people behind you, and they take the job. And when they got inside this work plantation, or whatever you want to call it, they had workhouses where you would have to pay rent. You had the store, and so the money you were making would barely cover your existence. So if we look at the model that we have, with Wall Street being the centerpiece, there's a lot of equations to be made. And you know what? I'm not saying that's bad or good, because a lot of good has come out of it. But we have to see, do we want to go further down that line, or do we go back closer to where, because what I am suggesting is that the world has been put on top of its head, where in a society that's about how we can work together to have a society move ahead, the economy is supposed to weigh for people. It's supposed to be a bartering mechanism, basically. But we had allowed these areas of finance to use wealth. I mean, where in this economy no longer serves the society. It's the society serving the economy. And now it's no longer the society serving the American economy. Now they want this society to be a component to serve a global economy. This is what's taking place. And in all of these maneuvers of coronavirus, it's not just about the virus. It's that now you have the World Health Organization that is an outside our nation, outside governance, outside our nation. Has nothing to do with our checks and balances, has nothing to do with our Declaration of Independence. Somehow have an authority over our rights. And they are living by totally different laws. And if you look at the media around the world, just like those pamphlets that were handed out during the Grapes of Wrath, I think it's the 201 event. I have to look it up again. I'll put it in, but they were planning on what would happen during a world pandemic. So here are administrators, business people, dealing how are they going to handle a pandemic. And it raises a lot of questions on how the CDC handles it, because now the WHO is working with the CDC, and there's many implications that, and I'm gonna have to post it, so I'm gonna have to break this down I'm gonna break it down into pieces, so it's easier for us to communicate. Because sometimes I'm putting things together in my head, I'm not sure if I'm expressing them clearly. I think we need to see these things. That the CDC was giving hospitals and doctors guidelines of how to code. Because if you understand the medical field, when someone comes into the hospital and they're sick, there's basically a number code, and they have to, it has to be diagnosed, and then it goes through this whole this business aspect of a whole language of coding that goes into between the hospital, the insurance companies, and it's a whole business regarding that, which is not saying it's bad or good, but what I'm saying is that we could be saying, oh, well, the heroes are on the front line, which, yes, they're always doing the job on the front, like, the nurses. But they are going from the data given, right? They're taking care of the people coming in. They're serving them, but they're not the ones creating the source, not like the source material, like the source data. They're not the ones that, like, I think it was Alan Ferguson from the Imperial College of London 13 years ago had wrote the source code, if that's what it's called, the paper, or did the scientific research on coronavirus 19. But it was 13 years ago. It was never peer reviewed, from what I understand. So it's not valid. So but the point is like we are making our choices on how to address it as a pandemic, going against our First Amendment right around the world. But just think, this is happening around the world, and it's not just, oh, let's clap our hands and pots and pans for the first responders. Think about it. They're having people act in accord around the world, and you're clapping while they're telling you to stay in your home. So maybe it is necessary. But what needs to be suggested is that we need to go into all of the information, all of the data, to make sure that they made these decisions and it was necessary, because they're stepping on your rights. And the truth of the matter is, we should never be in this position. Never. And it stems from 9/11. Preemptive action. And I'm going to go into another aspect of this new step away from individual sovereignty, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, into this arena, this new world, this new operation of authority, which is propelled by justification of preemptive action, because we had preemptive action in aggression, going into other nations first. We have preemptive action now in attacking a virus. It is suggested that there has been preemptive action of Homeland Security and other intelligence groups actually attacking American citizens preemptively because they are dissenters that may be going against anyone speaking out about the coronavirus, that maybe there are issues, are considered dangerous. So now in the world where we had created a climate of the war on terrorism, so all these people can now be demonized. And what else is happening and is being suggested in COVID-19 is a new way to segregate. So it's a new form of segregation already of travel. And now you hear Bill Gates talking how there's going to be a chip to people who have been vaccinated or not. And now the business aspect of it. How much money will pharmaceutical companies make if there is a vaccine that everybody needs to take, and now mandatory? And I'm going to add to this, because, see, this is why I think I have to break it up, because I'm going to go on. I drove out to New Jersey, and now another issue. All of the toll booths are now Easy Pass. Easy Pass is a private corporation. what I understood is, why would a private corporation be taking money over the Verrazano Bridge? That was my first instinct of it. So now, because it was initially supposed to be, there was not supposed to be a toll, and they were going to do it to help pay for the bridge, for maintenance, and then it was going to be for schools, and now it's just a private corporation taking money. Who knows where it's going? So, so now I drove out here to New Jersey, and I was talking about preemptive action. I forgot I lost my train of thought. I'll just have to return to this after. So anyway, so driving out to New Jersey. Oh, pardon me. I lost my train of thought. So anyway, I'm gonna have to start talking. I'm gonna have to look at this again, and this will be an introduction. So these are the things that are going to be addressed. And it has to do with preemptive action, and it's segregation. That was the point I was making. Because yes, even mandatory. The word mandatory. Pardon me. So as I'm driving now, where all of these signs were, the last time I drove out here, was talking about COVID-19, stay home. Now it was saying speed tickets will have mandatory desk appearances. So if you're speeding, it's mandatory. So now this is the stretch of well, anyway, but mandatory. This is the word. Imminent threat was a word, preemptive word. Imminent threat has been, through the Bethlehem Doctrine, has been redefined. The term has been redefined to mean that an imminent threat could be justified preemptive action through, because a think tank has come up with intel, which is just information through a think tank, not actual evidence. You know, it's not, we have evidence, there's a guy around the corner with the gun, and we have to take action to stop him from hurting people. See, this is how the snowball has built from after 9/11. The whole gun, you know, if there's a guy holding a gun, you know, you got to stop him, right? That's with the weapons of mass destruction. So from there, and there was no weapons of mass destruction, we're aware of that. And this is snowballed to this point where now it's going to be mandatory that every human being on the planet has to have shots, because we're taking preemptive action. That's really what's happening. So I think I'm going to go in, and it seems clear, and it makes it that people who are speaking out about these things, or are questioning them, are being targeted. That's what they call targeted individuals. And I'll give some info. I have the technology that's being used. I'll go. That's a whole nother topic, because I think it was Dr. Robert Duncan has a website, has a video, a presentation to MIT. He was in MIT. He went to MIT and he worked with the military, and he was one of the developers, researcher and developer, inventor of a lot of the technology that's being used, because we're in a new age. They call it biotech, biological weapons and neurological weapons. A lot of these weapons were being used in the Middle East, in Iraq. You know, it's like the gunslinger, right? It's like in the Wild West, you had guys who were soldiers who had guns with their weapons. Now people are coming back from the Middle East, the war on terror, and they've been using neurological weapons, all these new microwave, directed energy weapons, microwave weapons. They're using drones. They can using laptops connected to satellites. It's definitely a new world we live in, and we're all not unaware of it. But these old things tie in together, and how do we maintain our sovereignty? And just an example, I have a family member who's, you know, they were just about to retire. They pushed their retirement up. People are getting hit with taxes because it's all going towards, they're blaming it on people coming over to Medicaid or Medicare. Possibly, that's definitely a burden. But we're putting trillions of dollars into Homeland Security, which is a preemptive measure something that may happen. And what happens is there's a lot of retirees, I imagine, that are getting hit with their wealth, and they're taking these jobs. So it's like it's perpetuating a problem. And like someone like myself is, I'm totally opting out. Uh, I got a job in a bar. I don't want it to get. I don't want unemployment. I don't want to go in. I don't want any kind of bailout. I'm totally detaching from the system because I don't want to participate in this. It's a mess, financial mess. We're in $22 trillion. How could the president or anybody say that the economy is doing well if we're in $22 trillion of debt? Their idea of economy is obviously not related to the debt of the United States of America. It's about Wall Street economy, and the people making money in that arena are doing well. The debt is just compounding. So this is where that ties back into this idea of the Great Depression with the grapes of wrath, where the people who own the land there and the people who drive into this new town and need to make money. So these are the things we have to be aware of, because this is what's happening. And you got to understand too, in this digital world, like with the Easy Pass, there was no cash, and there was an old token booth. When I come into the town that when I came into, there used to be just a coin slot. So there's not even a need for anybody to man the toll, and it was closed. So that is just closing, because now, and this relates into the coronavirus, into schools. I heard, I think it was Mayor de Blasio in New York City say that we're going to put a device in the hand of every child. Now here ties in, it's just a lot of information. So I understand we're going to have to break this down. The telecommunications community, which is a global community. Now, they have put these devices as an intermediary in between us. And it's never, and you could say, well, it's a new world, but you got to understand, it's really no difference than someone saying, okay, I want to do business with that person. Okay, well, give me $50. Now it's like, I want to do business with that person. Okay, well, you have to buy a device for $350, and you're going to have to upgrades. But also, not only that, we're going to have access to all the information. You're not going to have any secrecy or privacy in between you communicating with the person you want to do business with, or even have a communication with. And now they're putting it into the classrooms of public schools. So now, not only, and they're changing the Common Core and all of these they're changing all of this, the schooling. And to top this off, I'll have to put a video and go into this. There is, the 5G technology is dangerous. And I have to put the clip of the video of a congressman asking someone, a lobbyist or representative of the telecommunications industry, speaking upon the 5G technology, that we're hanging cables around the country like Christmas tree lights, because it's not for the nation, it's for the global network. It's for the global surveillance system. It's not for us. That's why they're hanging it up like Christmas tree lights. And they don't care about what it's going through pristine areas of the country, putting cell towers in beautiful lands that has no business being there. And the local people cannot fight it, because the Telecommunications Act of 1996 says that the decisions will be made by the national government. And you could say you can fight it maybe for aesthetic reasons, but you can never, they put in legislation that if there are health factors such as like people dying, you cannot fight it. It's insane. So back to the video. So the video where the congressman was asking the representative for the table of representatives, asking, well, how much money have you spent on the research of this this technology in regards to how the effects, the possible harmful effects to human beings? And it's like, oh, well, I'll have to see. I don't actually have a number at hand, but I'm sure, but I can get back to you with the actual, I'll get to my people. They're like, but I'm not really sure. Well, and basically came down to, he was like, well, so, and then after all the him and him and all this stuff, the congressman said, what you're telling me is zero. And it was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So they have done zero research. So basically your children, they're going to put your children, if you have public schools or schools, they're going to put kids in a classroom for 8 hours, saturated by all this. And also another thing you got to understand, you know, we do, whether you understand it or not, we live in an ecosystem, right? Where even if you don't mind eating fake food, you know, every bees and all these things they're flying around, they play a part in the whole, how everything works. I mean, the whole earth is a natural system. Your body is part of that. And that's another thing aside, I know, because even my own background, believe me, I'm an asshole to a degree. And the only reason I kind of put my own checks and balances, I tried to put my asinity in check. So I started observing how much of an ass I can be. And then in doing that, I said, okay, well, I'm not only an ass. Let me look at the world outside of me. And that's made me aware of the Constitution. Inalienable rights endowed by the Creator. What the fuck does that mean? And my understanding came to, but separation of church and state is like life. That life we have makes us all equal. That's what it's about. So I set this up as hidden bricks on the road, and these are, I'm going to try to break these down into small clips and maybe actually do a little bit more research. I want to try to keep these on the fly because I want it to be an honest thing of communication, and I'll try to keep that. So hitting the bricks, because of now the coronavirus, this social distancing has been pushed off again until I can have interviews on the fly with people. Because that's interesting. That was the intent, just to meet people and say, hello, how are you doing? What would you like to say? And unfortunately, that's, well, maybe it could be. I'll get a 6-foot pole. So, so yeah. And these whole ideas of these terms that you have everybody saying, like, anyway, you know, I'm not going to go on anymore. Yeah, and never forget, right? You know, it seems like never forget became all about 9/11, and which is understandable. It was a horrible situation. But again, you know what? We never had all the factors of the situation. It reminds me a lot of what's going on with the coronavirus. We jumped to war, whether you agree with that or not. They, you know, recently they had started another investigation into, you know, where did the money come from? So it's not necessarily saying pointing fingers at anybody, but it's like, okay, how about we get to all the factors? Because I think it was within the 9/11 Commission report, they said, well, as far as the money, there was this line, like, as far as where the terrorists had gotten the money, they said, well, it's really not important at this point. That seems, every type of criminal investigation, that is a main point. Follow the money. Follow the money was what it's all about. And that's what we have to do, follow the money. Because it seems to be, a lot of this stuff seems to be related. And you got to remember, all wars aren't fought with guns and battleships, and especially now with all this neurological weaponry that Dr. Robert Duncan was talking about. They're fighting in other battlefields, and it's a lot of it's done through media, you know, hearts and minds. It could be the opposite, right? Propaganda, all these things. So anyway, stay free. And that brings up a different kind of stay well, you know. I don't know, I hate that shit. Just be an American, be healthy, try to be the best you can be, and let's try to let's not let them divide us any further, because this is one of the deals. I'm going to go on a little bit further. It's easy to point fingers. Like, I saw a video where there's this woman, there's a young man in a car, and they were pulling out of their driveway, and a neighbor came out, and she was an older woman, these are teenagers, yelling at them because they weren't locking themselves into their home, yelling and pointing, well, you shouldn't be leaving, pointing a finger. And so what happens is that people are upset. People play by all of the rules set in front of them, and that's fine. But when they don't want, then when they see that someone's like maybe getting some kind of reward by not playing by those rules because they're using handrails, and that's fine. But freedom is about, maybe there is areas for someone to use the handrails, have areas for someone not to use the handrails. And they want everybody to be pulled in for monetary reasons and control reasons. And this woman was losing her mind with a couple of teenagers because they were driving away because apparently she was locked down. And it possibly be like, oh, well, the longer, well, yes, she might be worried that they're infecting people. Or, well, they were in a car, so who knows where they were going. Or that the more people are out in the open, the longer it's going to last, which seems to be the opposite. People who know about herd immunization understand it's the opposite. That's another discussion. But some people are just so conditioned to take orders. Or some people are mandated. They don't say it's mandated, but your job, if your whole life is in a, you don't even see cash, you don't get a check, you go to work and they send direct deposit right to your bank account, what does it take for them to say, stop, no more? You know what I mean? They have us by the short ones. And someone like me, I'm getting hit left and right. Only because I'm not going to take any of the money from the government. I don't want any of the bailout money. I was working in a bar, and very making little money. I have this website. I have paintings I'm working on. I had a one-man show. I was getting rolling, but all these areas are closed now. But I have friends that are working. Fellows that we're helping each other out. And no, I'm not plugging into this system until this levels out. I'm not going to leverage myself. America is the Constitution. America is not the Wall Street pension plan. Although I hope that works out well for everybody, it should not affect everybody else's life. And we should not create a whole security apparatus just to prop that up. And merge that with a global network, security network or corona network or whatever the hell it is, to prop up a system that's not working. Because we had the crisis, the banking crisis, where people were, it was a kind of scandalous that we gave big banks a bailout, and now they have bailout programs. So now here's the progression again of now it's normalized. So, and here is happening again with people being told where to stand. You're going to places, there's X's on the floor. In the past would be like, okay, if if you're older, if you're not well, stay home. All right? That's it. So that's really what it is. They're see, and what else is, this is another issue. There's always been a class struggle. There's always been, it's the nature of things, right? I don't want to say class struggle, but when people have wealth, they have to have security. When someone chooses to go a route of wealth and power, they self-isolate themselves. They have to have security, and that's just the nature of it. Some people don't mind, so they're pushing this on other people now. You know what I mean? Like some people now that obligating themselves to work 8 days a week get pissed off when someone's enjoying freedom because they're living they limit themselves to what they want or need. They don't want to obligate themselves to debt. We've normalized debt now. So now you have people that don't have to leave their areas of wealth because they're behind security already, or want to implement that on people who have freedom in their lives or don't want to participate in that. So that's a lot of a lot of information, but I think that should be why. So I think that should be why gonna have to start making these into more. Maybe I'll still do the off the top of the head. I just want to show you something. If you can see those trees. I like, love being around the trees. That's one of my things. So anyway, see, someone like myself, I was trying, like I've always been a little bit outside the box. Not always. I've been an asshole in my life. I'm far from any model citizen, but I think maybe like 15 years ago, I kind of made changes where live very simply, get rid of all my attachments and my kind of vices, and try to live in the moment as much as possible, free and a sense of freedom. And it drew me closer to nature. And so I had these ideas of, oh, well, you know what, maybe I will live off the grid. And then I started doing research over years. And I was in the middle of doing that, but it's a conflict of interest with something I had developed. I called implicated abstraction, which is a compositional form. I had it with cinema structure, Stefan Scharf, synesthetic impact, theory towards cinematic syntax, had a big influence on my understanding of cinematic language. And I fell into, with a few friends, with some professional improvisers, theatrical improvisers, who were probably, that not only about talking on top of the head, but people who can go into depth into character and story. Some probably the best people in the country. But there was influences from maybe Second City in Chicago. One of the guys studied there. A couple of the people, well, it doesn't matter, but jazz influences where there was reference. In jazz, you have a standard, and if someone would maybe go off cue or whatever it may be, you use that reference to, it becomes part of the new thing you're making, the new thing. So it reminded me of how images go together. So music theory is akin to cinematic language. So over the years, I developed a compositional form, and I've applied it to poetry, I've applied it to painting, illustrations, and cinema work. And I have feature-length compositions. But in trying to maintain the content, I made no money, and I've only been in a small festival. Through the improv work. I'm just telling you a little bit about myself, why I kind of live a simple life. Through the improv, Viola Spolin, Hal Peller was introduced a bunch of us to Spolin-based improv, which was about object work, which seemed silly to me when I was first introduced to it, but it was my ego. So I started doing this object work, and I got very good at it. And with A&M Theater Company in New York, they have Anything Goes. I created a form. I created a show using object work and the cinematic structure related to how I was using improv with cinematic structure, and how implicate abstraction, my composition form, I could use that within performing object work, references, and to create a performance piece. And so I first tried it out at A&M Theater Company, because I thought I could, because I do multiple characters, I do object work, and I create with nothing. I just perform, and I use space work, they call it. That means, like, it's like mime, but not only you mime, you use space. So one of the actors said, well, you seem to have a mastery of that. Because I went there to see if I just looked like a crazy person doing multiple characters. And he said, no, it was dynamic. So I performed a solo performance at Dixon Place, Bowery Poetry, the Bookstore Cafe, which are, performers get shows off the road. I was supposed to do, an obstacles came in the way. But these are all things that it takes time and space to do. So someone like myself would prefer to bartend or work in a manner where I could keep that time and space to develop those things. So that's one of the reasons why I find myself in this position. So I had a little bit of conflict. Like, geez, I would love to be around nature. So I was like, how do I navigate both? So anyway, this whole world is coming apart where fringe arenas, now you can't even meet in a club. You can't even meet. These are off the charts now. So it seems like there's implications, and that's another thing what I was talking about earlier about like support groups, like say AA meetings and things of the like, that are outside the medical and these institutions. These are places like people who do that. It's self-supporting. There were people who self-supporting groups that are spiritual based, that have nothing to do with. Some hospitals hold meetings and stuff, but they are totally detached from any religious organization or any medical institution, any political